stand this tall. I'm a short Asian man. Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Erick. Nice to be with you guys tonight. I'm on staff with Cru here at UWSP. That's not in quotes. I don't know. I guess I have DJ'd a few things, so we'll just say that's a thing. That's what I've heard. Tonight I get to close up our series about follow and what it means to follow Jesus. And I've been following Jesus my whole life. I mean, not my whole life. We always say that, right? I grew up in a home that went to church and talked about God around the dinner table and stuff like that. And it was just a constant part of my life, and I've been following Jesus ever since. And I get to wrap up. I think I might have forgot about the title slide, Kevin, so if you have an old one, that would help me out great. You don't need to. But tonight, I get to finish up the series by talking about what do we get for following Jesus. If you've been here the last 5 or so weeks, we've been talking a lot about what does it mean to follow Jesus? Why should we? What does it take? But tonight I get to talk about what do we get? Which is, what do we get? We get something? Like, it's a little taboo. But we do get something, and it's exciting. I don't know about you guys, but for me, growing up in a home that went to church and talked a lot about God, the idea about getting something for my faith was really weird. We talked a lot about sacrifice and giving of ourselves, but not so much about a reward that we might get. So tonight, my hope is that you walk away knowing that we do get something for following Jesus with our lives. So before I start, would you guys pray with me? God, would you meet us tonight? I thank you so much for Randy's story and how you've moved in his life. I pray that we would all have a story where you've moved in our life, where you've affected us, God. I pray that people here tonight that don't have a moment where they've said yes to you being the Lord of their life, to following you, that they would listen in a little closer tonight and see that there's something that we get. God, I pray that you would speak through me tonight, and I thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. Amen. I realized I have a picture to introduce myself that I forgot about. Kevin, you were probably like, he's going to talk about that? I'm married to Courtney. She spoke a couple weeks ago. There's a picture I have of us. Aww. I like to say we are pregnant. And our son will be born soon, which is exciting. Exciting part of our life right now. That's us. It's fun. If you missed her speak, it's on YouTube, so check it out. She's really great. I'm going to move on from that. Imagine you're going on a trip somewhere really great. Let's just say you're planning a trip to Denver, Colorado. That might not sound great to you. I've been there, it's pretty cool. And let's say you know nothing about Denver and nothing about Colorado. You don't even know that that's the backdrop to the city. So you probably figure out the best route to get there, right? You get on the Google map and see how long it's going to take. Maybe you're going to fly. Maybe you've just got money to burn, and you're like, I'm flying first class. You got to research that flight. What time do you got to get to the airport? You got to do all this research. Then you got to go and look at what's there to do in Denver. You're like, where am I going to eat? What kind of food do they have there? Food is important, and you know it. You got to eat. And then you're thinking, what am I going to do when I'm in Denver? Maybe if you're a football fan, and you're strategically going to go. I don't even know if the Packers are playing the Broncos this season, but let's say they are, and you're going to go then, and you're going to go to Mile High Stadium. Maybe you're there's mountains in the background. Can you climb those? And so you're going to bring stuff, and you're going to pack things so you can climb some mountains. Then you find out that a lot of them are called 14ers, which is they're 14,000 feet above sea level. I've done it, no big deal. You can see what the weather's going to be like. Like, that picture it looks kind of like, is it 50 degrees? Or is it like deceptively warm and just the mountains have snow? You don't know. You're figuring all this out. You're doing all this research to figure out what you're going to need to do and what you're going to need to bring to do what you want to do. The Christian life isn't too different from this. If you're a Christian here tonight, you know the destination you're going. You know one of the rewards for following Jesus. And even if you're not a Christian, you've probably heard about this place. It's called heaven. As you begin to think about heaven, you might find it difficult. I know for me, the first time I began to think about what heaven was going to be like, or try to picture it, I thought it was difficult. Our minds tend to be so much set on earthly things, the things that we know, things we're accustomed to. Heavenly thinking is difficult. There's an author whose name is Randy Alcorn, and he wrote a book. He's written several books, but he wrote one book called Heaven, and it's about heaven. You might be surprised to know. And he says, many of us are so earthly minded, we're of no heavenly or earthly good, implying that we're so focused on things in front of us that we don't look to things that are eternal, things that are above us. The Bible actually has a lot to say about heaven, which I didn't know. And I didn't know when I first started thinking about heaven. I knew before I started writing this talk. Like in John 14:2, Jesus says, "In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you?" So like, there's a house with rooms. Like, heaven has a physicalness to it. In the last book of the Bible, Revelation, God gives John, one of Jesus' 12 disciples while he was on earth, a vision of what heaven is like. In Revelation 22, it says, "Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb through the middle of the street of the city. Also on either side of the river, the tree of life with its 12 kinds of fruit, yielding its fruit each month. The leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. No longer will there be anything accursed, but the throne of God and of the Lamb will be in it, and his servants will worship him." I'll be honest with you guys, I don't know what all of that means. And if we wanted to, we could probably spend hours debating and talking about what all of this means. But we don't have time for that tonight. I promise you I won't talk that long. But if you really start to want to think on this stuff, I would recommend checking out the book Heaven. I don't have a copy of it for you to borrow. I read everything digitally. I'm trying to save the planet and stuff. Just kidding, I like digital stuff. It's my thing. But one thing I do know about these two passages, about Jesus preparing a place for us and what heaven might look like, the vision that John's given, they spark my imagination. They set my mind on heaven all of a sudden. I start wondering, what is it going to be like? And these descriptions aren't clouds and white light and angels playing the harp and stuff like that. It's not that. It's not my Sunday school had pictures like that. I don't know if you didn't go to Sunday school or if your Sunday school didn't have that. That was a thing, at least at my church. And it's not that. The real heaven that God is describing isn't some clouded, bright white space, but rather a physical place not unlike the world we live in today. There's a river and streets and a city and trees that bear fruit, different kinds, and they have leaves. There's civilization, man-made things, and natural things existing in the same place. Not too different from what we exist and see today. But if Jesus is the Redeemer of our lives, and if Jesus redeems our lives from sin and death back to life and to forgiveness, if God can't be in the same space as sin and death and destruction, it's not far-fetched to imagine that this physical place that's being described in Revelation is a renewing of our world. One with life, development, work, and perfection. It's funny, my grandma, she always used to say that her job in heaven was going to be baking cookies, which as a kid I thought was really cute. It's like, oh, Grandma, like, I hope I eat your cookies. But as I grew older, I began to realize my grandma had a vastly more profound understanding of heaven than I did. There's work to be done there, and we even see that there's tangible physicality to it. Like, are we all going to have jobs in heaven? Are we going to be creating, eating? I think the picture in Revelation 22 makes it seem like we will. I'll be honest, guys, I get really excited when I think about heaven. A place where I might be able to run and not get tired. A place where I can sing as loud and as bold as I want to, and then louder. And it sounds good. A place where I can sit and stare at something more beautiful than any sunset or any sunrise or any changing of the leaves in autumn. Where everything I eat is the best I've ever eaten, insert thing, like every time. That sounds awesome. Spending big group time with other believers in the actual presence of God, and spending one-on-one time with the God of the universe face to face. When I start to imagine those things, I get super excited. I think of when I try to get a glimpse of what this might be like when I'm here on Earth. Well, I am. We're all here on Earth. I imagine the person in my life who, just like being around them is balming and soothing. It makes you feel like good and safe and happy. That feeling, as amazing as it is, as you think about that person, if you have someone like that in your life, if you don't, that's possible. But as I think about that, it's just a micro sliver of what the presence of God is going to be like. There's a song called Behold that Hillsong wrote. I think they wrote it. I don't know, they sang it. And the line in it is, the things of earth stand next to him being God, like a candle to the sun. Candles are great. I like candles. They're fun. They smell good. When the power goes out, they're nice to light, so you can see a little bit. But like, if someone was trying to use a candle to see in the middle of a bright sunny day outside, and they were like, I'm using this candle to see and light my way around today. I'd be like, what are you doing? It's a terrible light source at that point. And that's what that lyric is saying. That's further describing that the things on this earth that we experience, the best things, are just a small fragment of what God has in store for us in eternity. Anyway, so why spend all this time and energy thinking about heaven? We live here. We're not in heaven, we're here on earth, in the here and now. We don't want to be so heavenly minded that we're of no earthly good. We want to still be able to do things here. We don't want to just sit in our room and dream about heaven all day. You've got to go to class, you've got to study, you've got to hang out with your friends, you've got to do other things. But Colossians 3:1 says, set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. In this Christian life, we've talked a lot about Jesus. In this series, we've talked a lot about Jesus and following him. And if Colossians 3 is right, Jesus is now in heaven, in eternity with God. And if that's where he is, and Colossians 3 is saying for us to set our hearts, in our minds, I'm assuming, where Christ is seated, we're going to be forced through that process to think about heaven. Ian talked a couple weeks ago about how the Christian life is like, as Christians, we're like sheep, right? He had that funny video of the sheep on the tire swing. If you didn't see it, look it up on YouTube later. It was funny. I mean, I don't think it's quite as funny as some other people do, but it is funny. I'm admitting it. You can record that later. But like Jesus is like those sheep's shepherd. And this fascinating phenomenon you might not know about sheep is when they hear their master's voice among a sea of other shepherds, they know that it's their master. And they'll just be like, I don't know, say there's 300 sheep, and 100 sheep are mine, and there's 2 other shepherds. And I'm like, let's go, guys. They would just start following me because they know my voice. That's wild. That's so cool. And that is the beauty of the process of us being sheep as Christians, and Jesus being our shepherd. He calls us. We want to follow him. We want to be with him. We want to go where he goes. Colossians 3:1 is telling us that Jesus is in heaven, so our focus as Christians should, in some way, be focused on heaven. More than a place, though, as we think about reward and what we get for being Christians, the Bible talks about even more than that, than we get. Like, that sounds like I'm good enough with that, but there's more. Oh, wait, there's more. Matthew 6 says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal." I don't think I put it on there, but it goes on to say that for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. It's also found in Luke 12. I think I actually put that one on accident. But, so what are these treasures? Like, I know what money is. I know what treasure is here on earth. Like an iPhone or something. I can store that up somewhere, but in 2 years I'm going to get a new one, and that one's going to get recycled. Or maybe you're keeping it for longer, I don't know. But eventually you're getting a new phone. That treasure is temporary. We all know that. But somehow Jesus is talking about a treasure that does not get destroyed, that does not lose its value, and that is never stolen or broken. What is this treasure? If Jesus is going to prepare a physical place for us, like I mentioned earlier, and now he's saying there are also treasures in this place that he's preparing for us, it seems there's a physicality to it in some way. And I wonder, is there some sort of, heavenly bank account that, I'm making investments into, and someday I'm going to get dividends back on that, when I retire in heaven? I don't think it's quite like that. It's not a Christian retirement plan. Don't think of it like that. But I do think that Jesus is using these images of treasure and storing them up to show us something. Throughout the Bible, in the New Testament of the Bible, after Jesus' life on earth, people that have been following him and his philosophy and his ways and the things that he said, discovered, they used language of receiving crowns. In Revelation 2:10 and James 1:2, which are books in the Bible, it talks about a crown of life that Christian believers may receive. In 2 Timothy, it talks about a crown of righteousness that Christian believers may receive. And in 1 Peter 5:4, it talks about the crown of glory that Christian believers may receive. It's interesting they talk about crowns. There's an interesting fascination with that to me, because Jesus was a king of sorts, and we are called co-heirs with Christ as we follow him. He gives us that same kingly right. And the early Christians were talking about getting crowns for following him. It's a nice image of the physicality of the treasure we might get. Is it an image? Is there a literal crown that's waiting for me in heaven? I don't know. I can't actually tell you the answer to that. I'd like to think there is. I like that image. I like that sense that there is something waiting for me that is of a physical worth. But the Bible talks about how in eternity with God, that crown, we will be compelled to give it back to Jesus. Because we didn't do anything to earn any of this. Because we're following Jesus, we got crowns. Because we're following Jesus, we have a place in heaven. None of this was earned. It's all been given. And so it makes sense that I might give it back to the giver. It's just a loan, just a way of showing me how much he loves me for following him. So you might be thinking tonight, that's nice, Eric, but those are all things that are kind of yet to come. Is there anything that I can experience now, right now, in this moment, And I think so often as Christians in this Christian life, we hesitate to talk about anything that we might get in the here and now by being a Christian. Probably because it's not like a one-to-one process. It's not like a job where you work and they get paid for that work. It's not like a transaction you might experience in everyday life, like how you could go downstairs and pay $1 and get a cup of coffee at the brew house right now. It doesn't work that way. You can't give something to get it. You don't give your life to Christ and get a cup of coffee. That's not how it works. There's no formula for the Christian life. That'd be nice. I like coffee. But we do receive things in the here and now. This is what I know from my own life. Some of the best treasures I've received by following Jesus with my life haven't been physical things. Oftentimes they're things that I've desperately needed, though. Like a community of people who accept me for who I am. People to walk through life with, both physically and emotionally and relationally. Strength to face hard situations and ones that don't make any sense at all. Joy when the situations and circumstances in my life tell me that joy should be the furthest thing from how I'm feeling. To some of you out there, these things might not seem more valuable than $1 million in your bank account or a month of paid vacation to go and do whatever you want. And that's okay. Following Jesus with your life isn't for everybody. But I encourage you to keep coming out to Cru, keep checking out this community, keep hearing who God is and what he's about. Don't stop seeking who God is. But to some of you, this list of non-physical rewards might sound like exactly what you're looking for or what you've found. And to you, I